Good morning, everybody, to the special meeting of the Monterey Community Power. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair. Director Dettel calling from City of Santa Cruz.
Here.
Huffaker.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Director Huffaker calling from City of Watsonville. Not in attendance. Director Goldstein.
Here.
Bauman.
Present.
Harvey.
Present.
Espinoza.
Here.
Vice Chair Corpus is absent. And Chair Mendez.
Here. Thank you. I can join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Bauman, can you start us? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any, from either board members or staff, any consideration of late additions or deletions to the agenda? Okay, great. Hearing none. Now, time for the public comment. The public may provide comments on any item not on the agenda, but the board may not take action at this meeting. Any items not listed on the agenda other than to refer the matter to staff or set for a future meeting. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Any member of the public wishing to address the board? Any member from the remote sites wishing to address the board?
None are here.
Okay, great. Moving on, thank you. Is there any board member that needs to disqualify themselves from a discussion item on the agenda? Anybody from the remote sites?
No.
Great. Okay, moving on. Item number 6. Approved state mandated MBCP conforming 2018 Integrated Resource Plan, IRP, another acronym to add, for submission to the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission. Staff report.
Let's push it there. Hello. All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm sitting in for Tom Habashi this morning. I'm Dennis Deach O'Neill, Director of Power Services. Been here 3 weeks, enjoying getting to know the staff. I look forward to getting to know each of you and working together to move the needle on decarbonization and transforming the electric sector.
Welcome.
For this item, I'm going to have Peter Pearson come forward and present the item, but I wanted to thank you for taking time to make this meeting happen, because staff had been focused on just preparing this first instance of the report, and we weren't even given final rules on what we needed until late June from the PUC. So thanks again for taking time to do so, and with that, I'll turn it over to Peter to present.
Thank you. Peter?
Good morning, board. Thank you for attending the special meeting. Peter Pearson, Contractor Compliance Manager. I'll give you a little bit of background on the IRP. As you know, in 2015, Governor Brown issued an executive order setting a goal to reduce GHG emissions to 40% below 1990 levels. And later that year, SB 350, the Clean Energy and Pollution Act, codified that achievement of that goal. And for the electricity sector, that translates into 42 million metric tons per year by 2030. SB 350 also requires CCAs to obtain board approval and then CPUC, what they're calling certification of the IRPs. And for that reason, we called the special meeting, and for the reasons Dennis also mentioned. The IRP plan presented today for approval is more of a technical planning document versus a formal compliance document. And it's really going to be for CPUC staff for them to analyze the data in the IRPs. The IRP consists of the following components. There's a pair of Excel spreadsheets where we list existing and future expected contracts. There's something they call the Excel, or the GHG calculator, which is also in Excel, and that's used to determine estimated 2030 emissions based on the data input into the other templates. And then it culminates in this written report that is in the staff report today. And that really documents the goals, methodologies, and assumptions behind the data in the Excel spreadsheets. And I should point out that that report follows a very standardized, sort of prescribed document outlined by the CPUC. And that's attached to this report. This is the first implementation cycle conducted at the CPUC for the IRP, Integrated Resource Plan, and it involves the following steps. First, there was a statewide modeling resulting in what they call the Reference System Plan, and that is followed by the LSEs, like Monterey Bay, and other CCAs, submitting their conforming IRPs to the CPUC, and that'll be every other year. So this will be done next time in 2020. The CPUC then aggregates all the submitted IRPs, and they put that into another model to produce what they're calling a preferred system plan. A lot of new terms in this IRP proceeding. The PUC then compares that reference system plan to the preferred system plan to identify any deficiencies that they could try to mitigate or have actions to mitigate any deficiencies they see. So now really to what the crux of this is that as reflected in our IRP, the Monterey Bay IRP, our 2030 emissions are calculated to be well below the CPUC benchmark. The CPUC's benchmark, again for 2030, was 0.592 million metric tons, and that's for Monterey Bay. And the GHG calculator estimated that our emissions would be 0.1355 million metric tons CO2 equivalent by 2030. It's notable to point out that PG&E's benchmark was 6.072. So PG&E was 6.072, and our benchmark was 0.59, and we came in at 0.13 and change. We intend to, Monterey Bay Community Power intends to create a more visionary integrated resource plan that'll be more customer-friendly, public-facing later this year or in 2019. That will also be presented to the board and also really showcased on our website. And with that, that's really my summary of the IRP. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Director Goldstein?
I may regret asking this, but obviously the number one thing that jumps out at me is the fact that we're not at zero for our GHG emissions, and the report indicates that that's due to the Clean Net, what was it called?
Clean Net Short. Yeah, they have a lot of unique
process.
terms.
Is there a simple explanation of what that means, or is this a question that?
No, I think I can give a simple explanation. That the current methodology is really looking at an annual sort of CO2 emissions in aggregate, and this new Clean Net Short is going to be based on an hourly model where they're going to assign, or they have assigned, GHG intensities by hour. And so due to that, we do have some emissions. And I think the lesson learned from that is that if that methodology remains in place, because there are still, this is an evolving process, I believe, if that stays in place, we would then adjust our procurement to focus really on hourly amounts versus what we look at on a daily basis, monthly and annual. Does that help? So basically the current methodology is annual, this one is hourly. So it's a much more granular.
Okay.
And they're even assigning GHG intensities to, I believe, things like transmission, other things. So it's a very interesting model and methodology.
Interesting. Thank you.
Director Bauman?
So are you aware, so I'm assuming that even though we may be generating power, green power in another state, we still get credit under AB 32?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Corpus?
This is a planning exercise, basically, but
Right.
what's the consequence if we don't keep within the 2030 goal?
Well, obviously we have time to get to 2030, so we could take measures, assuming, again, these methodologies stay in place. We could take measures to continue to meet or exceed or get to zero. But there is no It's not a compliance document. There would be no fine, no citation, as far as we understand. It's just going to be, it's to help CPUC staff identify if the electricity sector as a goal will reach these 2030 goals. Yeah. And if not, they will, I guess, prescribe or identify deficiencies and then determine how best to address that for the whole sector and possibly for the individual players.
My second question is the CPUC seems to be looking at CCAs in a different way to try to exercise more control. And I assume this planning document is one of those ways of asserting more control. There might be a trend to even more in the future.
That is our ongoing concern, and we're always looking to see if there's more CPUC creep, so to speak.
Right.
But this does apply to all load-serving entities, including ESPs, so the other IOUs. So everybody, all load-serving entities are doing this. So I don't think we're being singled out in this regard. And before the IRP decision came out, there were a lot of comments by parties, including Cal CCA, where Cal CCA emphasized that we have governing boards that determine our policies, and that emphasize that this is, again, just a planning tool. So getting back to your question, I don't think there's two negative consequences if we don't meet meet the need.
Right.
But in its current form, as we're submitting it, we're well below it, the benchmark, that is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, one other question is there an update cycle for this? I mean, I understand this is the first one. Do we know that we have to resubmit in 2 years? Is it an annual thing?
It's a little unclear. The CPUC has sort of a broad schedule. I don't think they've assigned dates to it. Based on my experience, they take a long time to determine, to digest the data and then come out with results. So I don't have a very clear answer, but there's a loose schedule. I'd have to look at that more closely. I can get back to you on that if there are dates and certain milestones.
Thank you.
Any member of the board? Any member of the public wishes to address the board on this item? Either here or remotely? Okay, having none, I'd like to bring it back to the board. What's the will of the board? Entertain a motion. Moved by Director Bauman, second by our Vice Chair Corpus. I believe since we have remote locations, we need to do a roll call vote. Brett?
Yes. Let's see. Dettel,
Approve.
Huffaker,
Approve.
Goldstein,
Yes.
Bauman,
Approve.
Harvey.
Aye.
Espinoza,
Approve.
Vice Chair Corpus,
Aye.
and Chair Mendez.
Aye. Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, authorize CEO to execute master agreement and confirmation letter with High Desert Power Plant LLC for purchase of resource adequacy capacity for the period of January 2019 through December 2020. Staff.
Good morning, Board. My name is Jeremy Clark. I'm the Energy Trading Manager, and I just wanted to bring the item number 7 in front of you today. I assume that you've all read the staff report about procuring 50 megawatts of system RA from High Desert. The board has authorized MBCP to execute this contract under the risk management policy, but we really wanted to put it in front of you today because this is the first time that we've executed with High Desert Power, and it's a new EEI that we're putting in place. With executing this contract, it'll meet 20% of our system needs for the next 2 years.
Great. Thank you. Any questions from staff? Director Harvey?
So this is basically a backstop mechanism from what I can see. This is a gas-fired plant out in Victorville that we're entering into an agreement to ensure we have adequate capacity. Is that the gist of this?
It is a gas-fired unit, but it's more of a front stop that the resource adequacy market right now is highly competitive, and it's hard to find capacity. We really saw that in this year, and we want to make sure that we can meet compliance. So and this is not energy that we're transacting, it is capacity that we're transacting for reliability. And when we went out for market solicitation, this was at a reasonable cost compared to the rest of the market.
Yeah, that kind of my point. I mean, so it kind of seems to be contrary to things that we're working towards, but I understand this is really more in the risk management side of things, it sounds to me. But a gas-fired plant in Victorville, Monterey Bay Community Power, there are going to be some contradictory things I think we do now and then that perhaps, and I don't want to say we're holding our nose, but it really isn't in lockstep with every other thing we're trying to do. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know. To your point, maybe there's not a lot of capacity out there. This is the best option. Cost has to be a consideration too.
I'd like just to add a little bit about what resource adequacy is. It really is insurance that the grid operator, the CAISO, requires load serving entities to have in place for them to have reliability. As Jeremy said, we're not buying energy. I view it more as insurance that we are required to buy that's going to be utilized by the grid operator, the CAISO. And to your other point is that, yeah, if we want to move towards displacing all those conventional power plants with renewables that can serve that same purpose, but it's just not there yet.
Any other question or comment from the board? Okay, any member of the public wishing to address the board on this item? All right, seeing none or hearing none, I'd like to bring it back to the board for entertain a motion. Been moved by Mr. Director Goldstein, second. Second by Director Espinosa. Any further discussion? Call for the roll call, please.
Director Dettel,
Aye.
Huffaker,
Aye.
Goldstein, Bauman,
Aye.
Harvey,
Aye.
Espinoza,
Approve.
Vice Chair Corpus,
Aye.
and Chair Mendez.
Yes. Great. Moving on to item number 8. Authorize CEO to execute sales confirmation with Pacific Gas and Electric Company for purchase of carbon-free energy, non-RPS, for the period of January 2019 through December 2021. Staff report by Mr. Jeremy Clark.
Yes, I'm back again. So, this is kind of just to continue Monterey Bay Community Power's mission of obtaining carbon-free generation. And we're in almost fully negotiated confirmation with PG&E to meet, I think it's about 20 to 25% of our needs for the next 3 years of the carbon-free, which helps us meet our target goals for 2019 through 2021. And the reason that we're seeking approval from the board today is, according to our risk management policy, anything with a maturity of more than 3 years would need board approval, and that's why I am here today. The term meets the authorization given to MBCP CEO, but the maturity the maturity length exceeds what was allowed to us. And that's kind of the high-level overview.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for staff? Director Goldstein?
So how does the $2 a price per megawatt, how does that compare to some of the other longer-term contracts we've entered into in this time range?
Well, I put not to exceed $2 a megawatt hour because some of the years are actually cheaper than that. It's kind of variable based on year, but it's very competitive rates compared to other contracts that we've entered into. This confirmation is actually part of a solicitation that our consultant sent out in January of this year to a lot of different market participants, and from that solicitation, PG&E was shortlisted due to price and some other factors. So,
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for staff? Any member of the public wishing to address the board on this item?
Kevin Dayton, representing Clear, Honest Options and Clean Energy. I have to say, well, I didn't realize this meeting was going on until I got the email at 4:51 yesterday. I had to change my schedule to come to this. I looked through the agenda, and I chuckled because, well, first I saw the High Desert Power Plant, and I understand that, you know, this is just an emergency, but I know all about that plant, and yes, it is gas-fired. Went all the way back to 1997 when they started doing the licensing project for it. I know about it because California Unions for Reliable Energy went after it. But then I saw this one and I said, well, first of all, carbon-free, and I looked through it and I said, I wonder if they're including hydroelectric and nuclear in here, and I wonder if all the environmental groups will be here to reel against this. Apparently not. But I look at that and I look at buying power from PG&E, and I point this out to my wife, and she said, it's sort of like just government took over the power supply just so that government would have more power. I look at this stuff and I say, it's very strange why this happened, and it seems very contrary to all these visions that were going about. And I was a little skeptical about Monterey Bay community power going on, and I continue to wonder, you know, what is this all about? I thought that, you know, this was going to be government-controlled public power and all this sort of thing, and now we're buying electricity from PG&E, who is supposedly a competitor. It's all very strange to me, but, you know, we'll continue to monitor it, and we hope that, you know, the governing bodies here make wise decisions that benefit the ratepayers and fulfill the goals of the agency. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wishing to address the board? Either here remotely? Okay, I'd like to bring you back to the board. What's the will of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve. I just wanted to note a couple things. First off, you know, the difference between the resource adequacy and the actual power production. I mean, it's a relatively nuanced sort of field, and I'm learning more and more about it from our staff here at Monterey Bay Community Power. And you know, this is a case where we're actually buying power. The resource adequacy is really buying insurance, and in this case, we are buying carbon-free power from Pacific Gas and Electric, which puts our, you know, we're almost all the way hedged at this point through 2021 with carbon-free power, which PG&E is not. So there's a real explicit difference between what we'll be able to do and what PG&E is able to do. Lastly, before I move, staff recommendation, also want to commend staff. At previous meeting, I suggested blanking out the phone numbers and emails of everybody on the contracts to help avoid potential scammers, and I noticed that was done here. So kudos for following up on that. With that, I'll move staff recommendation.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Director Harvey. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
I may have a conflict on this item. I have some legacy stock that my grandmother left me with PG&E stock, so I don't know if I can vote on this. It's a small amount. It may be de minimis, but I see no benefit, but I would defer to the board on that. Or
I would recommend you abstain from voting.
Thank you.
Okay, with that abstention?
Just to clarify, not that I'm an attorney or anything, but I think abstaining is, in fact, an affirmative. So I think he would have to recuse himself. Recuse himself from the room.
Okay.
Okay, with that clarification, roll call vote, please.
Okay. Director Dettel is recusing. Huffaker?
Aye.
Goldstein?
Aye.
Bauman?
Aye.
Harvey?
Aye.
Long, excuse me, I keep doing that. Espinoza?
Yeah, approve.
Vice Chair Corpus? Vice Chair Corpus? And Chair Mendez?
Aye. Thank you. Moving on to item number 9. Any reports from board members? Let me start that again. I didn't click the button. Moving on to item number 9. Any reports from board members since last meeting?
No reports, but maybe it's just a question for staff. If they're going to be building battery systems in Moss Landing, is there any opportunity for us to participate in that, or is that third-party enterprise?
We are currently exploring what sort of participation with PG&E is proposing to build some batteries out there, and we're going to explore what we can do as well.
Any other comment?
This is just a comment, since we're buying RA and we're buying a lot of different, through a lot of different contracts, it would be good to have a summary of those, and which meets, for various acquisitions and purposes, what we bought, the amount we bought, the company we bought it from, or the entity, and where that fits in our long-range and short-term strategy. It's hard keeping track of all that, meeting by meeting. So if you had some summary page, that would be helpful for at least me.
Yeah, we can certainly look into that. We do cover all those details at the monthly risk meetings, but I'll work with Tom and Angela to see what can be shared at this meeting.
Great. Director Goldstein?
Last comment, Director Dettel, I hope you're still on the line. I know that the water department in Santa Cruz is doing some improvements to the Loch Lomond Dam, and I just sort of have often wondered if there's a partnership between Monterey Bay Community Power and Santa Cruz Water Department, either for RA in the future, given that we have a local dam in Santa Cruz. Is there a partnership there that might be possible down the road? So just ask staff to potentially reach out and see if there's any potential there.
We had a discussion that both the water director and myself, because of the wastewater plant and the water department effort, yes, there is definitely interest in some sort of partnership. They've done a huge solar build on top of one of the water tanks and getting ready to do a second one. But yeah, we've talked about what can be done at the dam also. So yeah, there is definite interest.
Great. Any other comments or more from the board? Great. Do I have to ask for public comment on this? Remember the public? Okay, great. Moving on to item number 10, which is adjournment of the next operations board meeting on Wednesday, September 5th, 2018. Just kind of want to clarify or information. The public may comment on specific items listed on this agenda. You want me to say that?
Sure.
When the board considers that item, it's just information. When the board considers the item entitled public comments, the public has the right to comment on any matter that is within the board's jurisdiction. In addition, the members of the public may request and receive copies with undue delay of any documents that are distributed to the board, unless there's a specific exemption under the Public Records Act that prevents the disclosure of the record. So, with that, motion to adjourn? So moved. Second? Great. We're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.